Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Oh, and so much to talk about. Purple Access. It is Judd. It is Chip Scoggins. And there goes Ross, who is producing for us, and we appreciate that greatly. So, Chipper, we have spent the past 2 days shoulder to shoulder, side by side, watching the Vikings at the first 2 days of their 3-day mandatory minicamp, which is basically the grand finale before training camp starts. And saw your column this morning in the Star Tribune, find it at startribune.com as well, on J.J. McCarthy. And let's just start there because, you know, all eyes are going to be on McCarthy, no question about it. But what is your takeaways so far? What are your thoughts about what we've seen through? I think it's now 4 open practices total, including the 2 mini camps.
Yeah, and I've tried to just really focus on him the first 2 days just to kind of see, you know, a lot of not just throws, but interactions and kind of how he, you know, goes through a practice. And 2 things really stuck out to me, and there's sort of an extension carryover from what we saw in the OTAs, is that, and I talked to some staff, some employees about this too, is just how much of a connector and a communicator he is with everybody on the team. He is, I mean, he's shaking hands, high-fiving, talking, asking questions, listening, pulling guys aside. I asked Harrison Smith about this yesterday after Wednesday's practice, just about, you know, what's he like? He said he's very inquisitive. And even with defensive guys with Harrison, you know, their lockers are near each other and they have houses near each other. So I think they hang out some away from the facility. And he's always asking questions about, hey, what do safeties do? What do they, how do they, you know, different kinds of, Harrison said he's always wanting to learn something, you know, which I find pretty fascinating and a great characteristic of a young quarterback. And you see it with O'Connell, but also just basically everybody. And somebody told me is like, if you're an off-season intern, he probably knows your hometown and something about you because he gets that involved in like knowing his teammates and staff members. So I think that's, you know, that goes a long way in terms of being the face of or a leader. And you know, Justin Jefferson, we talked last week, said he's the captain of our team. And I mean, I think that's, you know, high praise for a guy who's never taken a snap in an NFL game. And then the other thing is, Judd, his arm strength. I for the life of me can't understand the pre-draft conversation about his arm strength, because I mean, you talk to players, talk to Josh Metellus, talk to Aaron Jones, talk to Harrison. I mean, they say this guy sounds like Justin Jefferson talked about last week. He has a lot of velocity on his passes, a lot of zip. It gets in there. He can fit it into tight windows, and so they're still. You can see the learning and the growing pains on the first day of minicamp. I think it was the first 7-on-7 session, which is really kind of the one thing you kind of zero in on when you in these kind of settings, because there's not a lot of live drills going on. Mm-hmm. I think it was the third play. I don't know if he misread it, had miscommunication or whatever with Jefferson, but Byron Murphy Jr. jumped the route and picked it off, and would have been a pick six in a game. And it's, you know, I watched him, and you could tell he was frustrated. I think O'Connell was frustrated. They both pivoted. They have a giant, for people that seen, they have a giant video board, right, that's on the sideline. So like after every play, players and coaches can turn, and they often do, and watch to see what happened. And they show the replays right after. And they both pivoted to look and see what happened. And very next play, I mean, he really rifles one in up the seam to Jalen Naylor, and you know, O'Connell rushes over and gives him a fist bump. So I think that's kind of when you talk about growth, is he had a bad interception, came back the next play and had a really good throw. And I think that's important. Like, there was no hesitancy. There was no, oh my gosh, I had a bad play here, so this is going to affect my next play. I think he does a pretty good job of washing it off, right, and just kind of moving on. So that to me was another thing that I thought was a positive.
Yeah, I definitely felt, and it feels like so he's thrown in the practices that we have been to, which are not like they have like a couple of days of OTAs, and we get access to one. So these are not all the practices, but I feel like in the 3 picks that we've seen, um, yeah, his ability to adjust to it and put it behind him quickly is great. The other thing though that intrigues me, and this is all from very small sample sizes. So, like, what I'm about to say is certainly not gospel. But the other thing that intrigues me is, in some ways, I think he's the anti-Darnold in as far as the arm goes. Darnold throws as nice a deep ball as I've ever seen. I think, like,
Yeah.
it was gorgeous. It spoils you. Like he's splitting defenders with passes that are
Yeah.
45, 50 yards. You know, it's like, oh my God, that's incredible. But yet, I always thought his intermediate throws weren't as confident. There's no questioning Sam's arm, but they weren't as confident, and I didn't feel that they had the touch. JJ I mean, his intermediate throws over the middle, including the one after the Murphy pick that Naylor caught that you referenced.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. Like they are darts. And
Yeah.
I can only imagine 2 guys, especially, right? Justin Jefferson, who's told him, I will win at the top of the route. Well, that's the top of the route. And TJ Hockenson, who he seems to have established a chemistry with already. So it's interesting to me. And I guess if you told me guy throws perfect deep ball, but the intermediate passes are fine, but they're not great, or vice versa, I'm going to take the guy that can consistently hit the 15-yard pass and the deep ball might not be as good. Like that's the thing that stood out to me. And I say this as a positive, not a negative.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, those as Childress used to always call them, those home runs are highlight worthy. But I mean, how many of those are you going to get? I mean, and we saw one day one. I think it was Addison, right? He threw the deep ball there. Now, again, this is not game tempo. This is not guys trying to sack him. And same thing with not falling apart or get distracted by a bad throw. It's like nothing's on the line here. I hear you. Yep. This is a practice. It's not like a game is going to shift because of a bad play. But you're right. I mean, those intermediate throws is where he really seems that you can really see his velocity and the fact that he gets it in there. And Josh Metellus was saying the other day, he's like, a couple of these you felt like should have been picks, but he got him in there, and Josh is like, well, great throw, great catch. I mean, I thought they might have been interceptions, but they weren't. And Wes Phillips, the offense coordinator, talked yesterday about how he's starting to kind of layer some throws in there and showing some touch, and so that's like part of the evolution too. So, I mean, this is all, part of the process of getting acclimated, getting the chemistry down. I even talked to Aaron Jones yesterday about because we were talking about just his communication, how he's always pulling the guys aside. And he said, "Yeah, like
right,
me and him are getting on the same page. Like when they're in shotgun and someone's in motion, Aaron Jones like, there's so much going on. Play clock, play call. Does he have to change? Has the defense moved, adjusted?" He said, "So sometimes I'll say, hey, we got motion. The guy's still in motion. He's not set." So it's interesting how. And Aaron said that's kind of us working in trying to develop that chemistry and that continuity. So it's interesting how this thing really starts at the ground level, Judd, when you have a new quarterback. Like all these things that you take for granted, like the operation part of it.
Yes.
It takes reps, and I think that's why. I mean, everybody has to be here for mandatory, but I think that's why having almost 100% here for the OTAs has been so good for him, and like that's how this is how you build something. So, but I just I keep going back to, there's so much more to that position than just being able to throw the ball hard, right? I mean,
yes.
I do think the leadership component and having players really rally around you and look to you as a leader, you've got to invest in those relationships. And I feel like he's done that. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, I was talking to a staff member yesterday who talked about whether he knows it or not, or whether it's intentional or not, how much Jefferson's positivity and encouragement in terms of how he's always saying, just be confident. Like the first thing he told J.J. McCarthy when he called him, be confident. Confidence is everything in this game. Be confident. If you make a mistake, be confident. Don't lose your confidence. Like, whether he knows that or not, I think that goes a long way with Jefferson and receivers and everybody on the team. And so I just think like this time is important for that JJ's kind of establishing himself as the guy.
Yeah, and I think on the Jefferson front too, I think, there's no question that O'Connell talked to him about the importance of him being here too. Because when O'Connell talked after the first OTA, he alluded to the conversation. And, to Justin's credit too, he's like, yeah, okay, fine, cool, I'll be there. But this again speaks, Chipper, to me, to where this team is at in being all in, and clearly through the free agent signings, that's obvious. But where this team is at in being all in, like this is not a learning curve season for McCarthy. We're going to ease you in. I do believe, and this is completely something that I'm going to say that I might be totally blanking out on from previous years, but it feels like in OTAs and the minicamp especially, the 11-on-11 drills are slower than ever.
Yeah.
And I think that's McCarthy. And again, I think it's a good thing, but I think that's O'Connell wanting to make sure that everything is done right. So like instead of it being, let's go as fast as we can, full speed, that's for training camp. Feels like he's trying to get a real read on, I want JJ McCarthy going into training camp to know exactly what he's doing. So I would prefer to slow down these drills to make sure that it's all on the same page.
Yeah, it's not a walkthrough tempo when they go 11-11, but it's certainly not full speed. It's like a jog, a lot of it. And yeah, and I think that's probably just so it's not chaotic, so they get a good picture of the what they're looking at, assignments, all those things. O'Connell says that time and again, this is teaching and learning phase. And 11-on-11, I think 7-on-7 is for tempo and kind of get the sense of the real speed of routes and breaks and all those things. But 11-on-11 is more the teaching and fundamental phase. So yeah, I agree with you on that. I do think that's been a lot slower than I remember. And heck, it could have been this last year. I don't,
right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It feels
but
it's slower.
it is noticeable. Like, I think that's where they're really trying to emphasize certain things.
Yep.
Right. And you see them though, like they were, sometimes they'll even just be like a slow jog just to really emphasize the teaching point. So, but I think this is, you're right. So they come into training camp with full knowledge of like what they're trying to accomplish.
So another McCarthy observation from the actual practices, and as you just said, it's more 7-on-7, which O'Connell is called a passing camp, but I mean, at least that gives you some full speed stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the deep ball, which by the way, I think is going to be fine.
Sure.
Darnold was just great at it. The intermediate pass over the middle is fantastic. As far as the sideline passes go, first of all, I don't think any of this has anything to do with arm strength. Now, like that was discussed. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah.
I think the sideline passes on McCarthy, including the one that you just talked about, that it was clear that Jefferson either ran the wrong route, McCarthy threw to the wrong place. But I think when I watch his sideline passes, I think the problem is actually more the process. He needs to go quicker. He looks, when he throws an intermediate pass over the middle, I do not see any indecisiveness. Like I see a guy who's like ball out. When he throws to the sideline, correct me if you disagree, but I feel like he thinks a little bit more. And in this league, if you think, it's basically death on a pass like that.
Yeah. I mean, the one definitely stood out, and I again they know what happened on that one. And I don't know why that would be, Judd. Is that more of a timing thing? Is that more of a anticipatory throw?
I think it's a different play. I think it's a different play.
I mean,
I'll give you one. I'll give you a guy who struggled with the same thing, and arm strength was never a problem. And I'm not trying to compare these two guys as quarterbacks. Tavares Jackson. Tavares Jackson struggled with that same pass, and I think there's an indecisiveness. I just think like when we're talking about the different flavor of passes, Chip Scoggins, the different flavor of passes,
That's right.
I think they're different in how they present themselves. And I think that the sideline, I think you're worried about the route being jumped, but if you are, more than
Then
likely,
you're slowing down. Yeah.
the route gets jumped because you slow down.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear JJ's thoughts on that. Because maybe that is kind of one that he's still processing and maybe not comfortable with completely, the way that he is throwing over the middle or throwing up the seam or throwing different types of routes where it's intermediate. So I didn't notice it as much as you did, other than the one interception, and that one obviously,
and it's not consistently bad, but I'm just saying like the pass over the middle to me is like he's like a veteran.
That's his comfort zone. Yeah.
But I don't think I think some stuff, I think the experts blamed arm strength. And after seeing his arm strength, I ain't blaming arm strength.
No. And I don't know where that, I really don't know where that narrative came from.
I think they didn't see it as clearly, Chipper, as we do.
That's right. I don't know. Because everybody you talk to says the exact opposite. And what your eyes see when you watch practice tells you the exact opposite. So I can't for the life of me understand that narrative. But so yeah, I mean it's I mean it's going to be a work in progress. All this, 100%. Right? I mean, there's going to be
100%.
There's going to be mistakes and bad throws, but I do think. And it could be wrong, it could be proven wrong when they get into actual games where there's pressure and something on the line, not just a practice rep. But I from what you can see and just kind of his demeanor, I don't think he gets easily rattled. And I think having played at a high-profile, major, program like Michigan where they won a national title, I think that's created some of that. And some of that's probably just you have it, like Correct. Elite athletes, some guys just have it where they but I think he kind of has the ability to move on from those, which, I mean, ultimately that's, I thought Sam Darnold got better at that last year. Remember, I kept thinking he's going to fall apart after the Jacksonville game, and he kind of just was.
It took till Detroit.
Yeah, I thought for the most part he got better at that.
Yes.
So, but I do think I just think kind of he has that confidence that he's not going to get shaken over a bad throw.
He strikes me as what Brad Childress would call a flatline guy. He strikes me as a flatline quarterback. But what's interesting is he does not strike me as a flatline human being.
But an emotional guy, like it.
Yes. But that's the thing again about how you have to separate a person's personality from their that's what makes athletes, especially I think pros, so weird, right? Like personality traits that you see off the field at times don't necessarily always come on the field. But when I guess the word, after watching him in 4 practices thus far, and again, you're right, he's not being rushed. So there's a lot of things that are not being thrown into the environment yet. But the word that I would use is consistent.
Yeah.
He just seems consistent, which is outstanding for a young guy. But he just seems, I just feel like there's a consistency to his practice approach. I feel like there's a consistency to, if he throws a great pass or he gets picked off, you don't see a lot there. All of those things, again, I think are why he's had so much success, because part of being a great quarterback is rolling with the failure of the previous play.
Yeah. And I go back to the word that Harrison used, inquisitive. He's always wanting to know the why, the nuances.
Right.
You go back to last year, and defensive guys would talk about he's always picking the brains of guys. So he's always talking to different players about, their position or why things, work. So I think there's a genuine kind of desire to to know everything about, as Roman called him, know everything about everything, right?
Right.
Sometimes I can get you in trouble, but I think with him, it's really a good part of the process of really understanding the position and why things, operate the way they do. So I do like that he's pulling, Harrison Smith or Josh Metellus or Aaron Jones, different guys aside, just trying to gain as much knowledge as possible.
Yeah, it can't bog you down. I think that's the most important thing. Like
Yeah.
the knowledge can't slow you down, but if you can process it quickly, and if Harrison Phillips told you something about what nose tackle does, and you see that, and I mean that's the thing too, is we often don't appreciate the smarts it takes to play that position. I mean, just the overall processing like a computer within seconds, bang, bang, bang. So, yeah, I've been impressed, and I think that I think it feels like every step of the way you're seeing what you need to see at the proper time, including going back to training camp.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised, Chipper, at the end of the day when this is all said and done, as much as it hurt that he couldn't practice in 2024, feels like with the way that he tries to process and think things through, I think that year is going to really help him because it allowed him to grasp he strikes me as a guy that wants to grasp things. He wants to learn things. And when you're in that building every day without the pressure of having to actually play quarterback, I think that is a huge benefit if you use the time to your advantage, which I think he probably does.
I think he did by, everything everybody says that he did. And yeah, I agree. I go back to always say there's nothing wrong with the redshirt year.
No, I agree. On quarterbacks, I agree completely.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get to our final thoughts on what we have seen at Vikings Minicamp for the past couple of days, I want to talk to you about our friends at Stoked BBQ Pellets. That's right, folks. It is June. It's getting to July. There's no better time of the year to be out there grilling, and that means there's no better time than to have Stoked by your side. Stoked BBQ Pellets, a company based right here and operated right here in our great state. We're talking 50-count fire starter buckets, 4-count fire starter bags, the barbecue caddy, which is a must for any grill master. Stoke's solid oak firewood, perfect for your tabletop stove. Easy to use 5-inch pieces, will burn for 3+ hours. Stoked, absolutely fantastic, and you can find them at Fratelloni Hardware and Garden Stores. Also check out StokedBBQ.com. That's StokedBBQ.com to find their dealer locator to find the products at other places. But don't forget to start your search for Stoked at Fratelloni's Hardware and Garden Stores. All right, Chipper, other takeaways from the past 2 days for you?
Yeah, I think last week we did our 3 things that are the top 3 storylines, and mine was cornerbacks. And I think this is really an opportunity for Brian Flores and the staff and O'Connell and all the personnel to really get a long look at Okudah, Rodgers, particularly.
Yep.
To see if they feel comfortable going forward or if they need to add there. In base with ones, and I know I'll do the Kevin O'Connell disclaimer that this is not, written in stone, and don't give me your depth charts in minicamp. But
it's written in stone on my notepad.
That's right. We're seeing Rodgers. He looks like a number one now with Murphy.
Yeah.
But when they go nickel, I mean, Jeff Okudah's getting a lot of run with the ones, and Mekhi Blackman's not been in that mix as much. I think they're kind of easing him back in a little bit to kind of see. But I just think this is they're using this as a evaluation period to kind of see, do they feel comfortable, and don't know what that answer is. Don't know what that answer would be, but it's interesting that those guys are getting a lot of reps.
Yeah, the Okudah reps intrigue me. It feels like they feel like there might be more there than has, and he's been hurt a lot. That's the problem.
Yeah,
because we're talking about a guy who 2020 was the 3rd overall pick by the Lions. And yeah, the Blackman. I'm interested when training camp hits if Blackman gets more run in, because it does feel like he's being eased in. He's either being eased in or they don't think he's progressed enough. But it's so early.
Yeah.
On Rodgers, I think he's a starter. I don't think they're proceeding as if we're going to see if he can start. I think Brian Flores, in fact, if you remember it, I think he was the first player signed when free agency opened, and we're all like, what? But it feels like Brian Flores said this guy can start, and I'm you know what? Thus far, I like what I've seen. Like Okuda, I have no idea. Rodgers, I think there is something there probably.
Yeah, and Flores was asked about Rodgers at his press conference the other day, and he said he's been a fan of his going back to college. So this is a guy he's really has a lot of familiarity with, and I agree. I mean, if you would have asked me who's going to be your starting corners on opening day, I would say him and Murphy. I mean, I just think that's how it's going to be. Now
the nickel,
you got to have the depth.
Yeah,
you got to have depth, and so it's like, what does it look like after that? Is Okuda the first one in? Is Blackman? Is it someone else? And then the other one you mentioned too, Theo Jackson's getting, a lot of reps too at that. So I think they're trying to figure out that and how that's going to work with Metellus and what roles guys are going to have in that safety spot. But they have a number of safeties. I think they, that they really like, and they're trying to figure out how it's all going to work.
Yeah, and Metellus is not doing the 7-on-7 stuff or the special teams because I'm almost positive it's because of his contract. And so what's interesting too, though, is in team drills, which again are slow enough that Metellus is participating. Like that tells you the difference in speed. But Metellus also being used more in a traditional safety role there, and Jay Ward being used in the Metellus role. I think we're about to see, dare I say it, some curveballs. I think we're about to see some curveballs because Flores does not, and the players all talk about this, but he does not come back for the start of the camps like, okay, that was great last year, let's try it again. He's always got different things, and I wonder if with Bynum gone, if we're going to see Theo Jackson start, but at times we're going to see Metellus rotate in for Theo and Jay Ward get some reps in the Metellus spot because if you recall, Jay Ward a year ago played a little bit of cornerback. He's drafted as a safety, but he's definitely another one of these guys that can be used in multiple ways.
Yeah, I feel like they have two hybrid players with him and Metellus. And I mean, Jackson can be in that Bynum role, but I mean, that is the, the versatility that Flores looks for. I mean, that's, and I think he has it. A couple of things, it was good to see Darrisaw out there the first day. I don't know. We're recording this on Thursday, the last day. I don't know if he'll take part. My guess is probably no. I don't know that.
He didn't do individual drills. He wasn't out there on Wednesday, but he was out there on Tuesday. Taking some individual reps, and then Justin School played left tackle.
Yeah. But the fact he was out there doing that, I think that's a step in the right direction, obviously. And I don't know, like, what the timetable, how much a camp, I assume it's going to be a slow and deliberate process to get him ready. You don't rush that back. But so that was a good sign, Who else did who else we missed? Oh, yeah, Rondell Moore. He's not doing anything because as he's working back. But how do you think he fits? I would love to see kind of how he fits with what they're looking to do.
I don't. You know what? I think they just took a flyer. I don't even know he makes it. Yeah. But and it feels like Ty Felton is a young Rondell Moore as far as their statures go. I do think part of this too is kick returns, where Matt Daniels said yesterday that he wants to use Isaiah Rodgers as a primary guy, and Matt and I both agreed on this.
Yes,
like I was feeding him. I'm like, yeah, he looks good out there. You should do that. But then I said, are you?
And Flores was pulling you back, saying, "Stop, just."
Yeah, and then I said to Matt, I said, are you going to be allowed to? And he's like, I certainly hope so, but I'm not sure about that, Judd. That's a great point. And so we were going back and forth, but I think that Isaiah Rodgers is the kickoff guy. And I wonder if the punt guy, could it be Jalen Naylor, who, of course, in Green Bay lost the ball in the sun, but that guy looks like just physically he deserves a chance at something.
Yeah, I mean, everybody you talked to, and, West Phillips talked about, like, what do you see from him? He said, well, the first thing you see is, he's gotten bigger, I mean, he's changed his body, so he looks good. They really don't have other injuries, I don't think, other than Darrisaw coming back and Rondell Moore.
They've got they've got some guys who aren't practicing, but they're not guys that I think are going to make
frontliners. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
all right, Chip Scoggins, great stuff. Talk to you next week, okay?
sounds good. Thank you.